In this exercise, we will add effects when transitioning between views. We'll first need to install the React Transition Group library. Make sure to check the written instructions for this exercise for the version number of React Transition Group to install. Then we'll start by adding some CSS to app.css. The CSS transition component of React Transition Group gives us 4 classes we can use: Enter, Enter Active, Exit, and Exit Active. We need to give each of these a base class name. In this case, we will use the class name Page. Then we'll create 4 classes, and these will help us to implement a fade effect. The Page Enter class and Page Enter Active class describe the transition that will happen when you mount a component. It will start with the opacity set to 0, then you'll transition over 300 milliseconds to an opacity of 1 using ease out. And ease out means that the transition will start fast, then decelerate as it reaches the end. Then Page Exit and Page Exit Active describe the transition for when a component is being unmounted. It will start at opacity 1, then fade away to 0. And this transition is ease in, which means that it will start slow, then accelerate at the end. Even though it seems counterintuitive, it generally looks best to use ease in for something that's going out and ease out for something that's coming in. Now, understand that these are CSS properties. They're not specific to the React Transition Group library. The library lets us use any kind of CSS we like. We'll come back to this in a moment, but for now, let's open main-component.js. In here, we'll import a couple of components from React Transition Group. Transition Group and CSS Transition. Then let's go down to our routes. I'm going to highlight this whole switch element and everything inside it and just indent it a couple times to the right to get ready. And then we're going to wrap everything in a transition group component. This is just a wrapper container that helps us apply transitions to a group of components. Then inside that, we'll set up a CSS transition component. The CSS transition component requires a unique key, and because the React router assigns each route a unique key, that's available to us here as this.props.location.key. So we'll just use that. Then we'll give it a class names attribute, and pay attention here because this is class names with an S on the end, not class name. This is a special attribute that comes with CSS transition. What this does is, whatever word I give this, then it's going to look for a CSS rule that matches that, plus -enter, -enter -active, -exit, -exit -active. And it will apply those CSS classes. So here in app CSS, those are the classes that we added. That's going to be the link between the CSS and the React component. This class names attribute, in this case, page, that gives the base name for the CSS classes. And we'll add a timeout here for the default transition period as well, to 300 milliseconds. That's all we need to do for the CSS transition component. Make sure to add the closing tag. Now after that, let's take a look at the app. So once again, if you don't already have JSON Server running, you need to start it. I'll do that by navigating to the JSON Server folder. And then here's another way that you can look up previous commands, aside from using the up arrow, which may not work too well if you've used a lot of other commands since the last time you ran JSON Server. You can type Ctrl-R in a bash terminal, then search for previous commands you've entered. So here, I typed Ctrl-R, then just type the letter J, and my command to start JSON Server came up. Then I'll open a new terminal session and run yarn start. Now when we take a look at the app, you can see that there's a subtle fade effect whenever you switch to a different view. Just to demonstrate, let's add more CSS. Back in app.css, we'll add a transform property to the page enter and page enter active classes. Translate X means we're on the horizontal plane, and we'll start at -100%, which will put the component to the left of the page. Then we'll have it move right until it reaches 0%, which is just the normal position. So after this, you can see that whenever a component is mounted, it's moving from the left to the right. Now this isn't that subtle, and if you're designing a real website, it's not something that you may want to do, but this is just an example for you to see how it works. Go ahead and make a commit if you're using Git, and continue on to the next exercise, where you'll be adding more React animations.